My late husband was a holistic pediatrician who specialized in autism. And one of his favorite sayings was, "I'm not here to change who they are. I'm just here to help them feel better and more comfortable in their bodies." Now, what is a holistic pediatrician? Basically, it's still somebody who is board certified as a pediatrician, but for the most part, they're just looking for more natural ways to navigate supporting the body rather than first heading to medication. There are so many conflicting paths when it comes to natural medicine, and I even, as somebody who's well educated in the field, struggle even what to give my own son to help support his body in the best way possible. So I am joined here today by one of his colleagues, as well as one of my closest friends, Dr. Lindy Woodard, who's the co-owner of Pediatric Alternatives in Mill Valley, California. She is my goodness, Lindy, how long have you been a pediatrician? How many years?
I finished my pediatric residency when my son Sam was born, and he's 43 years old.
There we go. There we go. I love it. That's a great way to know
Literally.
when that happens. So I am so thrilled to have Lindy on the show today, and she's going to be able to answer a lot of what people's burning questions are about how can I support my kid's body without just throwing a bunch of medication? And we're not here to diss medication. I want to be really clear about that. We're just talking about the more natural options that you can have before you may have to turn to medication. Lindy, welcome so much to the show today.
Thank you, Betsy. I'm honored and looking forward to it because we always have fun together.
We do. And what do we talk about 95% of our time is food.
Food.
And
cooking and all the things we love. Yes.
And we do. We love food. We're not crazy about like every last ingredient. We're looking for flavor. We're looking for fun. We're looking for something interesting, but we are also looking for healthy food. And we love to inspire others to get into the kitchen and to start creating what is so easy for some people and so scary and overwhelming for others. And we want to take some of that fear out of it, because being in the kitchen is a lot of just comfortableness, and we want to help ease your mind into that. But I want to reassure you, we are not just here to talk about food. We're going to talk about homeopathy. We're going to talk about other natural things that we can do within our lives. So let's start off. What's your biggest philosophy about the best ways of supporting a child's body?
So first of all, my number one guide all the time is Mother Nature. The cycles of life on planet Earth is where I turn to. One of the best things about pediatrics is, in general, children are healthy and they want to be up and having fun and moving. So if a child, I always tell mothers, parents, the best way to assess how sick your child is, and this is a rule every pediatrician knows, if they're running around the room, they're not that sick. So that's always a good place to begin. It doesn't matter what color the snot is. Often it doesn't matter how high the fevers are because their thermostats are set differently.
Right.
And that's a really difficult one for parents to understand. But if they're wanting to play and drink, maybe they don't look quite as perky. They might need to sit on the couch for a while, but if their number one is what can I play with next, I know it just allows me to relax, and I think it's an opportunity for a parent to just step back and assess rather than actually freak out and worry and so on.
We do.
So that's a place to begin.
That's so important. It's such a great point that I know as being John, my late husband's, who was a close friend of Lindy, I know as being John's right arm and helping him answer the numerous emergency calls and texts and everything, is that the first child gets the most phone calls. And then by the time you've had 3 or 4 or 5, they're just like, whatever, we've been through this before. It's not a big deal.
Right.
So,
right.
So
exactly.
But the autism body, how different, how unique is it when it comes to the biomedical part of it? Now, I'm not talking about, we know behavioral, but But what is it from the biomedical end of things? How is it different?
Well, first of all, you know your child, so you want a pediatrician and advisor who trusts you, because sometimes it's very subtle, whether it's an autistic child or otherwise. So number one, you have to have a doctor who listens to you, who really gets, if you say there's a problem, they believe you. So first and foremost. So but I think I believe, I understand that this is a very dysregulated human being who has difficulty sorting out their universe, very different than how the universe occurs to us. So to help an autistic child feel comfortable, we have to hear what they need. And I'll use Betsy's son Joey as an example. He feels better if his arms are not just flailing around in space, and he's let us know this for a long time. So we have to understand who they are and what they need. And when they're not in their comfortable place, they let us know. And so it's our job to try to find out. And it's not easy. I mean, Betsy can speak to this even more than me, but the food is medicine piece. They can be going along just fine, and they might get a seed oil that we didn't even know they got, but we have to guess it might be that and get them back on their path. But it's subtle.
So
That's
hard
very
because
subtle.
there's no like test. I think everybody wants the test that's the definitive answer, and there is no
Yeah,
definitive answer in any of
no,
it. And it's a lot
no,
of trial and error. But here's part of it, Lindy, that I think is super important is that when the body is so dysregulated in so many different areas, you can't figure out anything because the body might be in high alert because it had this food, but it might be dysregulated because of this sound, and you don't know how they cross over. And that's where it becomes really hard, which is why the calmer sensory experience your child can have, the cleaner the foods their child can have, the more comfortable ways that we can get rid of environmental factors, that's when you can see a better path as to what's really going to help. Because I never would have figured out the seed oil thing had it not been for the fact that Joey's diet was so clean that I couldn't figure out why he was reacting every single time we went out to eat. And then I finally realized that his very once clean food was being cooked in oils that he couldn't metabolize. And wow, what a difference it made in his life and
right,
his
right.
dysregulation.
So that's very much on the physical level. Um, but this is with any child, and particularly any child. And I think we're learning a lot from the telepathy tapes and our
Yes.
young people who are finally speaking to us. But one of the best things we can do is drop into our quiet place, because they and all humans are telepathic, and we read each other's energy. And this is a little digression, but I remember my first meditation retreat. It was a Buddhist monk, and during the question and answer time, he said, "So how can I teach this to my children?" And he said, "Do the work yourself first." So if we can drop into our quiet place and they can feel that we're not freaking out, then they have the opportunity to drop in with us. So,
It's
it's simple
huge.
and not easy, but I think it's true. Whether the child has autism or it's a 2 or 3 year old that's just having a temper tantrum, I think it's the same for us parents. If we can learn to drop in, they'll drop in.
So, Lindy, it's so funny that you bring this up first thing because I'm like, oh, well, we'll probably eventually talk about telepathy. But Lindy's the person who first got me listening to the telepathy tapes. She's also a big vocal person as to got me into spelling as well. So she will pester me until I do something. And I say that with love. She's like, have you listened to it yet? Have you done this yet?
Well, if it looked interesting to me and you haven't accepted it yet, I will bug you until, but we go on the path together. We walk side by side.
So I
Yeah,
got to tell you what happened this morning. It's so funny that you bring this up. I swear to you, we
interesting.
did not even talk about this. So I have been suspecting for the longest time now that when Joey does his morning lessons, he is kind of taking the lazy way out of it, and he is just instead reading what's in my mind and giving
Hmm.
me that answer. And I feel like he knows the answer, but I also feel like he's giving me spelling me through the letterboard, spelling answers that are what he knows I want to hear. So today we decided to do our version of a double blind placebo type. Like we did our little very little testing. It was very not
Uh-huh.
controlled, okay? But
Uh-huh.
I Ron and I went in the other room and I wrote down the word book on a piece of paper, and then I wrote down the number 1283. And I sat down with him and I had Ron follow me in the room. And I go, Joey, what word am I thinking of right now? Book. He spelt it right away. What number am I thinking of right now? 1283.
Oh,
All righty
geez.
then. So this wasn't a huge shocker to me, but it was fun. It was fun for Ron to see it because I don't think Ron still can wrap his head around it. I think it's like, oh, that's
Wow.
cool. But it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
more than cool. Um, but that's exactly what we were saying. If he is reading my thoughts that powerfully, then I need to have better thoughts. I need to be controlled. My favorite is Katie Asher from the telepathy tapes when she was on my show. She had said to me, if you want your child to spell, you have to really clear your head because they are constantly picking it up. And she says it's like you're asking them to spell the Star Spangled Banner, but you're singing "O Canada." And if you can't fully clear your head, they're either just going to respond to what you're thinking or they're going to really struggle to focus. So we have to. So I appreciate that you said that at the very beginning because our chaoticness deeply, deeply affects the kids. And this certainly isn't just autism. This is all of our kids, whether,
Yeah,
yeah, because they're all born with that intuitive piece of it.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the food part. And if you're saying to yourself, my child's a picky eater, you've heard me speak on this subject before. Anybody who's listened to my podcast,
Hmm.
that I give all kinds of tips, and I have a class on picky eating. The part of it is that both Lindy and I preach that you don't have to do everything to do something. You can just take one small step to make a big difference. And those little steps get that encouragement to keep kind of going with it and learning. But the part that I always want to stress to parents is that, do you understand that if you're cleaning up the diet for your child, you are helping your entire family. You are helping yourself. You are helping your whole family by saying, you know what, we're not going to have high fructose corn syrup in our house anymore. We're not going to have artificial BHT or whatever it is that you choose to not have in your house anymore. And it's not as if you're just doing this for your child. You're doing this for everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
Are people
It's,
responsive to that? What's the main feedback you get when you ask them to start maybe cleaning up the diet a little bit?
um, I mean, I'm very fortunate, and I work with a group of people that have the resources and the intellect to mostly choose that for themselves. But I really think the snacking thing is huge. First of all, if a child doesn't come to the table hungry, then food doesn't taste good. I'm the same way. If I'm not hungry, then I'm not that interested in vegetables and salad. So,
I agree. We
and
snack way
and
too much.
the whole culture does. And if I could do anything, it would be convince my parents that it's okay for a child to be hungry, first of all. Hunger supports the appetite. And we buy children off with food. We throw food at them in the car, we throw it at the park. And I wish we didn't do that. I've had some of my European parents say, "What is this with you American children? They go into my cabinets, they open my refrigerator. And when my kitchen is closed, it's closed." They don't think the way we do.
No. Uh,
They're responsible for the food. No one has access to the food. The mother puts it out. I mean, this is different than our culture, but it is interesting to see how other cultures do feed their children. again, we're talking about a group of children, the autistic kids, that are very sensitive, but I would say that most of it is sensitivity, but some of it is taught and some of it is our fear that they're not going to eat, so we're going to give them whatever they will eat. And that's a tough one to overcome. And it really starts around, I mean, it starts at the beginning, but by 12 to 15 months, they'll pretty much eat everything. And then around 15 months, they notice if they don't eat, you give them what they want. And then they realize, oh, if I don't eat that, then mommy will give me what I want. And then you're off and running. So again, we're talking about, I tend to work with more children who are not autistic, but I would say there are similarities. So the other thing is, Betsy and I both love dogs. And I always love a dog that will eat anything. So when I have a dog, I'll eat a blueberry. I go, this is really good, and I'll give it to the dog. And sometimes they'll eat it, and sometimes they'll spit it on the floor, and I'll say, oh, that's so good, you tried it. And eventually, I often have a dog that eats almost everything. So I just get a real big kick out of teaching organisms to enjoy things that they think they don't like. And you have to try it sometimes 20 or 30 times until you actually accept it. So I think it's the snacking, it's the assumption that they don't like something, then immediately give them something else. You have to keep a smile on your face. Like, yep, that's what it tastes like. They spit it out, and you go, yep, that's what it tastes like. So it's your attitude as much as what's going on over there.
It is. And I actually did a podcast recently on this topic, and we talked about the grazing. It's the term in picky eating is grazing, where we're just constantly doing. And it's even harder with autism because they're in all these therapies where the reinforcements are candies and things, and that just messes things up even more so. And so that becomes more of an issue with, like, but
and it sends the blood sugars on this kind of a ride and makes you irritable and then starving. And it happens in my body. If it happens in my body, it happens in everybody's body. Yeah.
I love that you talk about this, because honestly, that is a big part. Now, I remember John telling me many times, the younger the child, the more often they need to snack. So when you're looking at, for example, an 18-month-old, how often are they needing to eat as opposed to a teenager? Like what would you say is, and I know you have a book of reference on this too.
Well, I love reading memoirs. I like reading about people's direct experiences. And some of my favorite memoirs are mothers who have lived in other countries. There's Denmark, there's Germany, and there's my favorite, which is French Kids Eat Everything, Karen Labillon. And she talks about her direct experience with her 3-year-old and 5-year-old with her in-laws in France. And she did a deep dive into French culture, but they basically get 4 meals a day. They get breakfast, lunch, goûter, which is before dinner, and then they get dinner, and they eat dinner late. But even in preschool, when they're 15, 18, 24 months, the kids, I'm not saying our culture is going to do this. This is not our culture, but to me, it's like, what's possible? And so, but the kids stand in line and wait till it's their turn to be fed. And they're taught this, which I find just interesting. So I would say, and I mean, a 15-month-old might still be breastfeeding. So breastfeeding is a quote snack, and then there's lunch, and then there's a little something before nap, which might be nursing. And then they take their nap, and then there might be a little something before dinner. So I still make the meals the grounding place, and as little as possible in between, so that they can really appreciate the food.
But I have to say,
I don't think they need to snack as much as they think.
Right, but but here's something that's an important thing to mention, is that
please.
the snacking is part of a result of being hungry because the individual didn't get the nutrition and the nutrients the body needed in the meal. So if you're
Sure.
having some eggs, maybe a little sausage, maybe some fresh fruit, so you've got protein, you've got some good fats, you've got some amino acids, all of that happening in your breakfast, or some, like in many cultures, fish, or because they have
Soup.
bone broth, all kinds of soups, so they
Exactly.
have all that.
Exactly.
So they're getting all those nutrients, and their body is saying, "Oh, we are satiated. We're good. Thank you so much. We won't bother you now for several hours." As opposed to giving a child a like toaster strudel, and
Totally.
and
Yeah.
then now you've got a blood sugar spike, and now they are going to be hungry in a couple of hours because they never got the nutrition that they needed to be satiated. So I mean,
Absolutely.
they kind of, yeah, they go
I'm
hand in
glad you
hand.
brought that up.
Uh,
Yeah. So I have taught nutrition for years from the principles of the Weston Price Foundation, westonaprice.org, if your people haven't heard of it. But a movement started by Sally Fallon based on the work of a dentist from
yeah,
Cleveland, Ohio in the 30s. And we talk a lot about nutrient density. So if I'm asking a parent or a child, tell me what you're eating, I want to hear specifically. And if they say oatmeal for breakfast, which of course is fine, I said, do you put butter in your oatmeal? Do you put coconut oil in your oatmeal? Because I'm always looking for nutrient density. That's the traditional fats: butter, coconut oil, ghee, olive oil, and then fat from healthy animals. And bone broth, which of course is very rich in minerals and so on and so forth, and then fermented foods. But really, if I can get butter into everything and coconut oil and olive oil on everything, even if they're not eating that well, I'm trying to get nutrient density into them. So you're right. I can't just give them a sugary cereal and expect them not to eat again until, say, lunchtime. That it won't work. Your blood sugar goes up, it goes down, and you've got a very irritable child. Yeah.
yeah, and adult too. Like
An adult. Yes.
we're no different.
Definitely. We're no different. No, no, definitely.
Well, this is great, and I appreciate all of this because I think that when people sometimes think that I'm talking about diet, that I'm going to say you can never have that again, or you can't eat. It's not as strict. It's more about what you do need to get in, what you do need to fit in, rather than what you have to take away. So that's what she said is exactly right. That nutrient density, which is why I preach this all the time, is herbs are one of my favorite foods, I guess, on the planet,
Yeah.
in that they're very nutrient dense, and herbs are a big part of other cultures' food, way more than they are in the States, and that they are put in large amounts of herbs because they add so much nutrition. And so if Joey's going to have a bowl of rice, I always sprinkle some parsley or cilantro in there too, so that he's not just eating a bowl of rice.
Or like
Those are
the
things.
Indians do, blooming their herbs in ghee. Everything goes into the ghee, the turmeric, the cumin, the ginger, the
Yeah.
garlic, and then the vegetables and the meat are added. And you don't even have to know what you're doing. You just start with the fat and you add the herbs, and you just
We do.
um,
We need those
I,
good fats.
a friend of mine who's a chef, he calls me a kitchen witch. And I would say you're that too. We take what we have and we start with this nutrient density, and then we start building from there,
We do
right?
this. So, and when we're together, we're a force to be reckoned with. So, so that's great. Okay. Well, we can talk some more about food, but let's move our way, because actually, in talking about herbs and the medicinal component of herbs, I mean, for example, in moving into herbs, into things such as teas.
Mm.
And there's so many great teas that we can be giving our kids as well as ourselves, that they don't necessarily even know they're having anything. Making a nettle tea, you can make it iced, or using dandelion tea, which is a great detoxifier,
Yes.
or like you said earlier with the turmeric and all the golden milks that are out there there now
Mm-hmm.
too. Also,
Mm-hmm.
so really good for inflammation. What are some
Mm-hmm.
other like kind of crossing into that almost beverage end from herbs
Yes,
that you would
perfect.
suggest?
So first of all, I think most people know humans don't make vitamin C. And when we're sick, we really chew it up. And I'm fortunate in that I live in California and there's a lot of lemons everywhere, but I always have fresh squeezed lemonade in my refrigerator. I take a half a gallon mason jar. I put about a half a cup of fresh squeezed lemon juice and a quarter of a cup maple syrup. And if there's only adults drinking it, I might put a little cayenne in there too, but for the kids, not. And I just think that's a great beverage. And when they're
Yeah,
sick, I might spike that with one of the sodium ascorbate powders or Radiant C. There's a lot of things that I can start with that basic from Mother Nature vitamin C and then really spike it so I can get many grams of vitamin C into a person. And so your people may know there are fat soluble vitamins and water soluble vitamins. Vitamin C is a water soluble vitamin. So you cannot get too much vitamin C. You either pee it out or poop it out. So just pour it in. So I always start there. It's good for your skin. I
it
mean,
is.
call it it's a miracle, really. Vitamin C is very important. So that's where I cross over. And then I love kombucha. And I do make my own, but and kids like kombucha. It's a fermented
Yeah, but
beverage.
you know my feeling about
I
kombucha.
know.
I'm
We
not.
we've
We've had
we
this is our only disagreement.
sometimes we can disagree. Um, So for some of us, kombucha works. I mean, I don't feel the caffeine. I
It
feel like the sugar's chewed up. I don't feel it in my own body.
right.
Yeah.
It's not. It's that. What is that brand that is synergy? I don't know. It's the one that is just so bad. Like there's not
Oh,
good.
I don't even. I make
It's the
my
one
own,
that's
so
mostly, yeah, see that's
yeah,
different.
that
Okay,
doesn't count.
that doesn't count. Like like the ones that are being sold in stores are
Yeah.
so they spike yeast levels to
Do they really?
extremes.
Do
Oh,
they? Yeah.
tremendously.
Okay.
And so yeah, I'm not a fan of kombucha.
Yeah.
But I
It's
you
easy to
know
make. We'll have to have. It's a very forgiving
it,
organism, but I know
the
people only have so much time.
it's just
Yes.
the mass produced ones that I
Yeah.
struggle with all the time.
Yeah. I get it.
Okay, but fermented foods in general are so
Yeah.
tremendously good. So let's go
Yeah.
back to the beverages though. So the other things like all the different types of teas that we could do.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
gosh, where were we the other day? We found beet kvass. I don't know if your kids are going to drink it, but darn it, that's one of the greatest things there is out
Really good
there.
for you.
Uh,
Absolutely.
beet kvass is a fermented beet beverage. It's got a very tangy, lemony taste to it, and you could add a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
maple syrup or honey to sweeten it up if you need
Mm-hmm.
to.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good one. And here's the other thing: if you buy something like beet kvass, and it is so great, and you don't want they're not going to drink just straight beet kvass.
Mm-hmm.
Have like a soda that is safe, like an Olipop or something like that, and just add a little beet kvass to it. It'll make it pink, and it'll give it a lot of the probiotics that are in the beet kvass. So
Here's a fun one.
yeah.
Hibiscus tea.
Oh, good one.
Jamaica
Yeah.
tea. So in a
Yeah.
Mexican market, you buy the dried flowers. There's easy recipes, but basically you just boil them, strain them, and that's loaded with vitamin C. And then that red, what are those called? Cyanins. But that beautiful
Uh,
red color, and then
yeah.
you can sweeten it
What
with
is
what you want.
that?
But one of the things I do, I take a fresh pineapple, clean it, puree it, and mix the fresh pineapple with the hibiscus tea. It is
Oh,
so yummy.
yeah.
Yes, and I don't even have to sweeten that.
Oh, that sounds incredible.
It's so
And that
good.
is good.
And
That's a
sometimes
good
some
one.
lime juice too. Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
have some fun with teas. I know the summer's not over yet, so
Mm-mm.
start exploring that in general.
And you can make sun tea also. You put the hibiscus flowers in the jar and just put it out on your deck, and when it's the color you want, then you
Right,
just have
that's a fun
hibiscus
thing to
tea.
do. So one of John's
So,
favorite supplements for little ones is elderberry, and
right,
elderberry syrup.
right.
Elderberry
Right.
syrup is so tremendously good for our kids, but you can
Absolutely.
do it too much. I mean, John was really big about this. I don't know if you feel the same, but he would feel you should reserve elderberry for when you're getting a tickle in your throat, when you're just about ready to come down with something, because it immobilizes viruses. It makes them so they can't replicate. So it's not
Hmm.
something that you can take late in the game. You have to take it kind of early, like just when you get that tickle. But if you take it
Hmm.
every day, you don't get that same effect. So it's best to
Yes,
have like elderberry syrups and things like that reserved for when you're exposed to something, when you're about to take a trip and you don't want to get sick, like keeping germs from being able to replicate. That's one that you still
I like
recommend?
that. Definitely. There's another one. This is a brand, Integrative Therapeutics, but it's called V Clear, and there's only one ingredient, which is pelargonium, which is geranium. And
Oh,
that is one also that if you start it right at the beginning of a cold, it
yeah.
seems to shorten the course of it. But it's a single ingredient. I've never seen anyone have a problem. It's a very interesting supplement.
I do remember that one. That is an older one that
Yeah,
I forgot about that. Yeah, that's a
yeah,
great one.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
I
good
mean,
one.
but like those vitamin C's, the elderberry, all those kinds of things, lots and lots of liquid. So that's the other part, water. You can drink as much water as you can, but if you don't have any source of minerals in the water, that's when it's not really having the effective piece of it. So what about things like electrolytes and the importance of adding minerals to our or just electrolytes to our water? I've heard sea salt, just adding a really good sea salt to the water just to give it some trace minerals. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think water is better absorbed if there are minerals in it. I think the lemon will add a little bit, but then a pinch of sea salt in there. I don't eat anything that doesn't taste good to me, so I can handle it being a little salty. I don't want it too salty, but a little sea salt will have it be more bioavailable, and to me that's adequate. Of course, there's all kinds of proprietary things we can add to it, and there's some really good ones. I think I really like the Redmond salt products.
Oh,
They have
good.
a good source, and I like their stuff.
If you're
Yeah,
going to do an electrolyte powder, just make sure it doesn't have food coloring and make sure it doesn't have like corn syrups or even sugar. I mean, there's a lot of,
yeah,
more gentle, non-sweet type that are better for you. Okay, so
yeah.
that's good to know when it comes to that. All right, let's go into homeopathy a little bit.
Okay,
I
all
don't
right.
admit to be an expert on it, but I've dabbled with enough of it over the last 30 years of my life that I know a bit, but I know you can explain it more. So first,
Yeah.
why is homeopathy a great option when it comes to helping our kids
Well,
and
let me
ourselves?
just start with how I discovered it, if you don't mind. So,
Please, that'd be great.
a million years ago. So, I'm a Midwesterner. I started out in Ohio, and then I was in Wisconsin for 17 years. So I was finished my
That's where John and I
residency.
lived is in Wisconsin.
Yes,
That's why she's
yeah.
mentioning it.
So I finished my residency at Milwaukee Children's Hospital. I was purely allopathic. I got a great education. I had no reason to do anything other than what I'd learned. But I'm a biologist and I'm a botanist. And like I said, Mother Nature is my guide. So I'm practicing pediatrics and I'm realizing I'm supposed to treat these kids with antibiotics. Ultimately, I'm sending them to ENT for their ear infections to put tubes in, and they're running around the room, which is where we started. They're running around the room. They're not that sick. So I first realized that I probably don't need to treat these ear infections. And there was good literature coming out of Europe saying that they didn't treat them. So that was my first clue that there's something wrong here. So I practiced literally for 17 years and then moved to California. And I just said, I have to learn something new. I can't keep doing this. One of my patients in Wisconsin had found the homeopath. I really didn't know what it was, but I decided I was going to homeopathy school. And it was the best thing I ever did because it actually taught me to understand how to read an organism, how to read the vital force. So Samuel Hahnemann was a German physician in the late 1700s who had really gotten to the same place that I had. He was giving arsenic and bleeding people, and he said, this is not working. So he stopped practicing, and he could read Latin and Greek, and he went through and he learned a principle that he called like cures like. And he started experimenting on himself and his buddies. And he started with a crude substance. For him, it was the bark of the Tintona tree, which is quinine, which is what we still use in some forms to treat malaria. So he gave himself and his subjects a little bit of quinine, and it had some curing effects, but also had side effects. So he said, so what if I make it more dilute? So he added water and he shook it. And then he tried that, and then he added more water and he shook it. And what he discovered was the more dilute a substance becomes, the deeper it works in the organism. So you have to expand your believing this. You have to cross the bridge of belief, if you will, to a certain degree. But once you see these substances work in others, or you feel it work in yourself, you really start understanding the nature of reality, if you will, and what dis-ease is. It's an energetic state superimposed on your natural state of wellness and balance. So just getting that was great. But the other thing that Samuel Hahnemann said is symptoms are the language of the vital force, and the vital force is that which energizes an organism. You call it chi, or you can call it, we all have names for it, but he called it the vital force, that energetic body that animates life, is what he said. So symptoms are the language of the vital force. The other thing he said, which I love, is there's no such thing as a little suppression. So a great example is you're listening to a friend who's upset, and you're saying, well, it doesn't sound that bad to me. Why did you do it this way? And you just want to go, wait a minute, what about my feelings? But if you say, oh, I really can understand how that feels, and you really do feel it, there's a relaxation. So when an organism has a dis-ease state, there's a resonance. And if you find the remedy that resonates the same as the dis-ease state, you get harmony. And so I know it's wild. And the other thing that's really important is water. So these substances are put into water, and water has some amazing properties that allows it to organize and resonate. So that's a very, very, very short version of a very complex but simple philosophy.
Right.
So, and the other is symptoms go from inner to outer. So if you get a cold, at first you're sick and you're like in a little ball, but you start feeling better and the snot starts coming out. And that's usually when you head to the doctor, because there's a loose cough or there's a lot of snot and you're sure you have a sinus infection or bronchitis. But the truth is, it's the correct direction of cure. Those are also Dr. Hahnemann's words. So that's a snapshot of homeopathy. But the other thing that's really special, if you give the wrong remedy, there's no harm.
Right.
And if you give the right remedy, it's magic. So it's a wonderful modality for a parent to be able to use on themselves and their families on acute illnesses. Now, chronic illnesses like autism, much more complicated. You need to work with a good homeopath, because there's layers.
Right. Absolutely.
You're peeling the layers of the onion. But yeah. I did bring one book. Oh. And there are many books. But so you need remedies, and you need a book or 2 or 3 or 10. So this is Homeopathic Medicine for Children and Infants. Dana Ullman, who is a classical homeopath. He's over in the East Bay in Berkeley. I'm in Marin County. Right. And there are many, many, many more books. But the beginning is a little introduction to homeopathy, like I just launched on. The end is a description of various remedies, and the middle is nerve injuries, food poisoning, fever, earaches.
So in the middle
of the night, your child wakes up screaming, my ear hurts, and you've got your remedies. You can flip through a book and try a remedy. It's not just about this is the remedy for earaches. There's the earache where they're screaming and writhing in pain.
Exactly.
And there's the remedies where their red is hot, they're feverish and their face is hot. But you start understanding the personality of the remedies and you match them with the personality of the illness.
For the most part, aren't essential oils a little bit in that realm of too? I mean, it's not
They're
homeopathy,
wonderful.
right?
And we had many discussions about this. But there are crude substances and then there are potentized substances. Homeopathic, essential oils, and I've used them and I've felt their effects and they're wonderful,
Right.
but they're not homeopathy.
It's a different,
Homeopathy is its own entity.
right?
The closest analogy, the closest other modality is Rudolf Steiner's biodynamic preps. So most people know him as the originator of the Waldorf school, but he was also a German mystic around the same time. And he came up with similar principles for his biodynamic preps. So this is all interesting stuff, but good question.
It's interesting to know. I love essential oils, and I do feel that they can help in many different ways when it comes to, especially like peppermint for tummy aches or headaches, and different scents can help in so many different pathways. But even though it's still a vibrational signature, it's not necessarily working on the cures premises.
Here's a great story about peppermint essential oil. I was at the local hospital having a little procedure and I had a headache. And they said, do you want ibuprofen or essential oil? And I said, essential oil, of course. So they brought me some peppermint oil on a little cotton ball and they had me smell it and my headache went away immediately. So I use this all the time.
I never go anywhere without peppermint oil in my purse. It's so great, especially if I'm like tired and need to be stimulated in one way or another.
That's good to know. I like that.
That can be a nice, especially if you get it in your eye, because then you're really awake.
That's true. That's why I just put it in a cotton ball. It's strong stuff.
Well, this is all fantastic. I love that you started this conversation with the fact that we have to first center ourselves, because meditation, calming ourselves whenever possible, not getting so involved in so much negativity that's being thrown at us. And my last podcast was on this exact topic. So if you're listening now and you're thinking, well, how do I stay in a more calm state? Listen to the last podcast, because I had a really great conversation about how much do I really need to get involved with tragedies that might be happening all around us, and how much do I have to give my energy to that subject? And that's why I feel that right now we're just too aware of too much negativity. Like, our grandparents, like they were concerned about their farms. They were concerned about maybe their neighbors' farms, their church, but that's where it's like they didn't know what was happening on the other side of the world.
TMI, too much information.
It's too much information. So that's part of it. And of course, laughter is big. But the last thing I'm going to talk about is a natural way of feeling better is something that I also know you're big on, and that is exercise in nature. And I don't mean necessarily that you have to be a gym rat. I'm talking about the fact that we need to get out there and walk and connect with nature whenever possible. Do you actually ever prescribe that as a doctor?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm really fortunate. I have this beautiful little office with a garden in the back and a grassy lawn. So sometimes if the kids are just all over the place, I say, let's just go in the backyard and let the kids run around. Of course. I mean, we all know that about our kids. I'll just fess up. I was in a little funk a few days ago, and my housemate came to me and said, let's just go for a walk in the neighborhood. And she was so sweet. And just looking at the trees and touching them. I mean, we all know this is true. So when we feel ourselves wallowing in something, just go look at the trees and listen to the birds.
It's so easy for us to say it, Livy, where we live, because the majority of the year we can go outside at most times of the day, and of course that makes it way easier. But even when I lived in Wisconsin, when I raised the kids in Wisconsin, I would bundle them up and say go outside and play, because
Absolutely.
I didn't let that ever
Absolutely.
stop me
Yeah.
from whatever might be out there. I do empathize for the kids like in Phoenix and Tucson this time of the year in the
That's the
summertime.
toughest.
That's a tough one.
That's a
I
tough one.
I
Yeah.
don't think I don't know how to
Yeah.
get around it, but it's
Yeah.
a really struggling one.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, that would be another part, is to be able to move the body whenever possible. But
Hmm.
Lindy, thank you so much for being on the
Thank you,
show.
Betsy. This was very fun. It's the first
We
time we've really done this.
I know. I'm sure it won't be the last, because we have a lot more we could talk about.
Yes, we do.
We definitely can. Everybody, thanks for joining us this week, and we'll be back with you next week. Bye bye.